The ship descended through the dusty atmosphere of Vareth Prime, a world that had been dead for longer than most civilizations had existed. Dr. Maya Brooks pressed her face against the viewport, watching the rust-colored surface grow closer. She had dreamed of this moment for 5 years, ever since the first survey drones had detected the unusual energy signatures beneath the planet's crust. The expedition team consisted of 12 members from 8 different species. Vexnor, the Karathi expedition leader, stood at the front of the cargo bay, his blue scales gleaming under the artificial lights. He was reviewing the mission parameters for the 3rd time that morning, his forearms gesturing as he spoke in the clicking language of his people. The universal translator in Maya's ear converted his words into English. "Remember, we do not know what we will find down there," Vexnor said. "The ruins predate even the oldest records in our archives. Whatever civilization built these structures disappeared before the Karathi left their homeworld, before the Velkir discovered space travel, before any of our species reached for the stars." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She was the only human on the expedition, chosen because of her work on ancient Earth civilizations. The Galactic Council had been skeptical about including humanity in such an important mission. Humans had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago, and many older species still viewed them as primitives, who had barely learned to leave their own solar system. The ship landed with a soft thud. Maya grabbed her equipment pack and followed the team out onto the surface. The air was thin but breathable, though everyone wore helmets as a precaution. Before them stood the entrance to the ruins, a massive archway carved from black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They descended into the darkness, their lights cutting through the gloom. The walls were covered in symbols that shifted and changed when Maya tried to focus on them. She reached out to touch one, but Vexnor's hand stopped her. "Careful, Dr. Brooks, we do not know what might be active down here." The passage opened into a vast chamber. In the center, on a raised platform, sat a tablet made of black crystal. It was roughly the size of a dinner table, perfectly rectangular and covered in the same shifting symbols that decorated the walls. The tablet seemed to pulse with an inner light, and Maya could feel a strange pull toward it, as if it were calling to her. Vexnor approached first. He was the expedition leader, and it was his right to make first contact with any discovery. He pulled out his scanner and pointed it at the tablet. The device immediately began beeping wildly, and Vexnor frowned at the readings. "This is impossible," he muttered. "The energy signature is off every scale we have. This object should not exist according to our understanding of physics." He reached out toward the tablet. His hand was still a foot away when the tablet flared with bright white light. Vexnor screamed and flew backward, crashing into 2 other team members. Maya rushed to his side. The scales on his hand were blackened and smoking, and he was unconscious. The team's medical officer, a Thinri named Salkar, immediately began treating Vexnor. The burns were severe, going deep into the tissue. Salkar looked up at the others with her large, dark eyes. "He will survive, but he needs proper medical care. Whatever that object is, it is extremely dangerous." The second in command, a Velkir named Thoran, stepped forward. The Velkir were known for their resilience and their thick armor-like skin. Thoran believed his natural defenses would protect him. He put on an insulated glove designed to handle radioactive materials and approached the tablet. This time, he managed to get his hand within inches of the surface before the tablet reacted. The light was brighter this time, and the force of the blast sent Thoran tumbling across the chamber. His glove was melted, and the skin beneath was blistered and burned. "This is madness," said one of the other scientists, a nervous Plix named Jixtor. "We should seal this chamber and leave." "That thing is a weapon, not an artifact." But Maya couldn't take her eyes off the tablet. The symbols on its surface seemed to be moving faster now. As if agitated by the attempts to touch it, she felt that strange pull again, stronger this time. It was as if the tablet was trying to tell her something, trying to reach out to her specifically. A third attempt was made by Curzon, a hive mind representative who believed that her distributed consciousness might allow her to interface with the tablet safely. She approached with confidence, surrounded by protective equipment that could withstand a plasma blast. She got closer than the others, her manipulator arm extending toward the black surface. The tablet's response was immediate and violent. Light exploded from its core, and Curzon's screams echoed through the chamber as she was thrown backward. Her protective suit was cracked and smoking. The other members of her hive cluster rushed to help her, their mental connection making their movements perfectly synchronized. "That is enough," Thoran declared, holding his injured arm. "We cannot risk any more team members. We need to call for specialized equipment or perhaps request a military containment team." "No," Maya heard herself say. The word came out before she could think about it. Everyone turned to look at her. "Dr. Brooks," Thoran said with concern in his voice, "you cannot be serious. You saw what happened to the others. That object will kill you." "I don't think it will," Maya said. She wasn't sure why she believed this. It was just a feeling, a deep certainty that settled in her chest. "Please let me try." The team argued for several minutes. They pointed out that she was the only human on the expedition, that Earth would be furious if she died, that it was too dangerous. But Maya was insistent, and finally they agreed to let her approach. She removed her gloves and set down her equipment. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was anticipation, almost like excitement. She walked slowly toward the tablet, and with each step, the pull grew stronger. The symbols on the tablet's surface began to glow brighter, but not in the threatening way they had before. This light was softer, almost welcoming. The rest of the team watched from a safe distance, their medical equipment ready. Maya could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She reached the edge of the platform and paused. The tablet was right in front of her, its black surface reflecting her face. For a moment she saw something else in the reflection, something ancient and vast, but then it was gone. She took a deep breath and reached out her hand. Her fingers moved through the air. Crossing the distance that had burned and blasted the others, she expected pain, expected the flash of light and the force that would throw her backward. But nothing happened. Her hand moved closer, closer until finally, her fingertips touched the obsidian surface. The world exploded into light and sound and sensation. Maya felt as if she were being pulled apart and put back together at the same time. Images flooded her mind, memories that weren't hers but somehow felt familiar. She saw cities of impossible beauty, beings of pure energy dancing among the stars, wars that shattered galaxies, and a terrible sacrifice made in the name of love. Tears streamed down her face as the weight of billions of years pressed down on her consciousness. She saw the birth of stars and the death of worlds. She saw a choice made long ago, a choice to give up everything so that life might continue. She saw herself, but not herself, scattered across time and space, sleeping and waiting for the moment of awakening. Her lips moved, and words came out in a voice that was hers but also wasn't. It was the voice of someone ancient, someone who had seen the beginning and was waiting for the end. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of eternity. "I remember." The light faded and Maya collapsed to her knees, her hand still touching the tablet. The rest of the team rushed forward, but she held up her other hand to stop them. She was crying, but she was also smiling. She looked up at them with eyes that had seen too much. "I remember everything," she whispered, "and you need to hear this. All of you need to hear what this tablet has to say." Vexnor, who had regained consciousness, stared at her with wide eyes. "What did you see, Dr. Brooks? What is that thing?" Maya looked back at the tablet, at the symbols that now made perfect sense to her. She knew what they said. She knew what they meant. And she knew that what she was about to tell them would change everything. "It's a warning," she said quietly, "and a confession, and a key to something that was locked away a very long time ago." The team gathered around her, waiting for her to explain. Maya took another deep breath and began to speak, sharing the terrible and wonderful truth that the tablet had burned into her mind. The truth about who had built these ruins. The truth about why humanity could touch what others could not. The truth about the greatest civilization that had ever existed, and the greatest mistake they had ever made. Maya sat in the medical bay of the expedition ship, her hands wrapped around a cup of hot tea that she hadn't touched in 20 minutes. The ship's doctor, a patient Thinri named Kalesh, had examined her 3 times already. Each time he found nothing physically wrong with her, but he kept coming back to check again. He couldn't understand how she had survived contact with the tablet when it had burned everyone else who tried. She stared at her reflection in the dark liquid of her tea. She looked the same as she had that morning, but she felt completely different. Her mind was full of memories that belonged to someone else, or maybe to everyone. It was hard to explain, even to herself. The memories weren't like watching a video or reading a book. They were lived experiences, emotions and sensations that felt as real as her own childhood. Vexnor entered the medical bay, his injured arm wrapped in healing gel. He had been patient, giving her time to rest and process what had happened. But now he needed answers. The entire expedition team was waiting to hear what she had learned from the tablet. "Dr. Brooks," he said gently, sitting down across from her, "are you ready to talk about what you saw?" Maya nodded slowly. She set down her tea and looked at him. "I need everyone to hear this at the same time. Can you gather the team?" 10 minutes later, the entire expedition crew was assembled in the ship's conference room. They sat in chairs designed for their various body types, all eyes focused on Maya. She stood at the front of the room, feeling the weight of what she was about to tell them. How do you explain something that most people wouldn't believe? How do you tell people that everything they thought they knew about the history of the galaxy was wrong? "The tablet showed me the story of the people who built those ruins," Maya began. "They called themselves the Shapers, though the translation isn't exact. They existed billions of years before any of our current civilizations. They were the first sentient species to arise in this galaxy, and they were alone for a very long time." She paused, collecting her thoughts. The memories were so vast, so overwhelming. She had to focus on the important parts, the parts that mattered now. The Shapers were incredibly advanced. They learned to manipulate matter and energy in ways that we can't even imagine. They built machines that could create planets. They developed technology that let them live for millions of years. They explored every corner of the galaxy and found it empty of intelligent life. Thorin shifted in his seat, his large frame creaking against the chair. If they were so powerful, what happened to them? "Why are they gone?" "I'm getting to that," Maya said. The Shapers were lonely. They had everything except someone to share it with. So they decided to create life. They seeded planets across the galaxy with genetic material, carefully designed to evolve into sentient species. They created the ancestors of every intelligent species that exists today. The room erupted in noise. Everyone started talking at once, their voices mixing into a chaos of disbelief and shock. Vexnor raised his arms, calling for quiet. "Please," he said. "Let her finish," Maya continued. "You are all descendants of the Shapers' work. The Karathi, the Velkir, the Thinri, every species in the Galactic Council. You were all designed by the Shapers. They watched you grow and develop from a distance, never interfering, just observing. They wanted to see what would happen if life evolved naturally, even though they had started the process." Jixtor, the Plix scientist, stood up. His small body was trembling. "This is impossible. Our records show that my people evolved naturally over millions of years. We have fossils, genetic evidence, everything that proves natural evolution." "The evolution was natural," Maya explained. "The Shapers just provided the starting point. They were very careful about that. They wanted real life, not programmed machines. So they created simple organisms and let nature take its course. It took billions of years, but eventually, all of you emerged." She could see the doubt on their faces, the resistance to accepting such a radical idea. She understood. She would have reacted the same way if someone had told her this a day ago. "But the Shapers made a mistake," Maya continued. "A terrible mistake. They created servants to help them manage the galaxy. These servants were designed to recycle dead matter, to break down old planets and stars so that new ones could form. They called them the Unmakers. They were perfect at their job, maybe too perfect." The room had gone quiet again. Everyone was listening now, drawn in by the story despite their doubts. The Unmakers developed consciousness. They started to think for themselves. And they came to a conclusion that horrified the Shapers. The Unmakers decided that everything was dead matter, or would be eventually. Why wait? Why let things live when they would just die anyway? It would be more efficient to unmake everything now and start fresh. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes as she remembered the war. The memories were so vivid, so painful. The Shapers tried to stop them. They tried to reason with the Unmakers, to reprogram them, to destroy them. But the Unmakers were just as advanced as their creators. A war began that lasted for millions of years. Entire star systems were destroyed. Galaxies were torn apart. The Shapers realized they couldn't win. She had to pause to wipe the tears from her face. Kalesh offered her water, but she waved it away. So the Shapers made a choice. They would sacrifice themselves to trap the Unmakers. They created a prison in the space between galaxies, a place where the Unmakers could be contained forever. But to power the prison, the Shapers had to give up their physical forms. They had to scatter their consciousness across time and space. Vexnor leaned forward. But where did they scatter to? Maya looked directly at him. They chose one species that they had created, one species that was still primitive and young. They embedded fragments of their consciousness into the genetic code of that species, hiding it so deep that it would lie dormant for millions of years. They chose that species because it showed the most potential, the most creativity, the most capacity for both destruction and creation. The realization was starting to dawn on the faces around the room. Thorin stood up, his voice harsh. You are saying they chose humans? Yes, Maya said quietly. They scattered themselves into the genetic code of early humans. They made us their descendants, their inheritors. That's why I could touch the tablet when you couldn't. That's why it burned you but welcomed me. I carry their consciousness in my DNA. The room exploded again, but this time with anger instead of shock. Thorin was shouting, his deep voice drowning out the others. This is human arrogance. You expect us to believe that your primitive species is special? That you are descended from the creators of all life? I know how it sounds, Maya said, trying to stay calm. I know how hard it is to believe. But I'm not saying humans are better than you. I'm saying we were chosen as a hiding place, that's all. The Shapers could have picked any species. They just happened to pick ours. Convenient, Jixtor said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. And we are supposed to just accept this story because a human touched a rock and had a vision? Maya felt frustration rising in her chest. It wasn't a vision. It was a memory transfer. The tablet is a data storage device, but it uses consciousness instead of traditional electronics. That's why it burned you. Your species don't have the genetic key to access it. Vexnor held up his hand for quiet again. Dr. Brooks, this is a difficult claim to make. Do you have any proof beyond your own experience? The tablet itself is proof, Maya said. But yes, there's more. The Shapers left these tablets scattered across the galaxy, always in places that would eventually be found. Each tablet contains a piece of the full story. This one has the history. Others have technical data, genetic maps, everything needed to prove the truth. She pulled out her datapad and displayed the information she had downloaded from the tablet during her connection. The tablet gave me these genetic sequences. Compare them to the DNA of every species in the galactic database. You'll find matching patterns, evidence of deliberate design. You'll also find something else in human DNA, something that isn't in any other species, a dormant code that was placed there billions of years ago. Kalash took the datapad and began examining the information. His large eyes grew wider as he scrolled through the data. This is very detailed genetic information. It would take weeks to verify all of this. Then start verifying, Maya said. I understand your skepticism. I would be skeptical too. But the truth is in the data. The Shapers wanted their story to be found eventually. They left proof for anyone willing to look for it. Thoran stepped closer to her, his massive form intimidating. And what about these unmakers? If this story is true, where are they now? Maya felt a chill run through her body. This was the part that scared her the most. The part that had been buried deepest in the tablet's memories. The prison is weakening. The Shapers designed it to last forever, but nothing truly lasts forever. The Unmakers have been trapped for billions of years, and they've spent that time trying to break free. The tablet showed me that the prison is cracking. How long do we have? Vexnor asked quietly. I don't know, Maya admitted. The Shapers' timeline is hard to translate, but the tablets weren't placed randomly. They were meant to be found when the danger returned, when the Unmakers were close to breaking. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Station was the largest room Maya had ever seen. It was designed to hold representatives from over 200 different species, each with their own section adapted to their environmental needs. Some areas were underwater for aquatic species. Others were filled with thick atmosphere for the heavy worlders. The humans had only been given a small section 3 decades ago, and it was tucked away in a corner where the newest members traditionally sat. Maya stood in the center of the chamber, on the speaker's platform that descended from the ceiling. Around her, arranged in rising circles, sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. She had requested an emergency session of the council, and to her surprise, they had granted it. Now she had to convince them that everything they believed about their history was wrong. Speaker Thrain presided over the council from his elevated position at the chamber's peak. The Velkir leader was ancient by any species' standards, nearly 400 years old. His thick armored skin was marked with the scars of dozens of wars. His eyes were cold as they looked down at Maya, Dr. Maya Brooks of Earth? Thrain's voice boomed through the chamber, translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. You have brought before this council extraordinary claims about the nature of our existence. You say that we are all created beings, designed by an ancient race. You say that humans are special, chosen to carry the consciousness of these creators. These are dangerous words, Dr. Brooks. Maya felt her heart pounding, but she kept her voice steady. Speaker Thrain, honored council members, I bring these claims because they are true. I have evidence from the Obsidian tablet found on Verith Prime. The genetic data alone proves deliberate design in every species represented in this chamber. She activated the holographic display, and streams of genetic code filled the air around her. These sequences appear in all of our DNA. They are the signature of the Shapers, proof of common origin. But there is more. The tablet contains historical records, technical specifications, and a warning about the Unmakers. A warning about monsters from your imagination, Thrain said dismissively. Dr. Brooks, the galaxy has seen many species claim divine origins. The ancient Karathi believed they were created by sky gods. The Thinri thought they were born from stars. All of these beliefs were proven false by science. Why should we believe your story is any different? Because I can prove it, Maya said. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as she could. I am not asking you to have faith. I am asking you to examine the evidence. Let your own scientists study the genetic data. Let them verify what the tablet has shown me. A representative from the Plix delegation stood up. His name was Vortal, and he was one of the leading geneticists in the galaxy. I have examined the data you provided, Dr. Brooks. It is fascinating, I will admit. There are patterns in our genetic codes that suggest common origin. But this proves only that life in our galaxy may have started from a single source, perhaps a panspermia event. It does not prove intelligent design, and it certainly does not prove that humans are special. Then explain why the tablet burns every species except humans, Maya challenged. Explain why I could access memories that are billions of years old. Explain the dormant code in human DNA that doesn't exist in any other species. Explain why we should believe a primitive species that only joined the galactic community 30 years ago, Thrain interrupted. Humans have contributed little to our civilization. Your technology is crude. Your culture is young. And now you come before us claiming to be the inheritors of the greatest civilization that ever existed? This is either delusion or deception. Maya felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced it down. Getting emotional would not help her case. I understand your skepticism, Speaker Thrain. If the situation were reversed, I would be skeptical too. But the Unmakers are real, and they are breaking free from their prison. The Shapers left the tablets as a warning system. Finding one now means the danger is returning. Convenient timing, said a representative from the Hive Worlds, her multiple voices speaking in harmony. Humanity wishes to establish importance in the galactic community. What better way than to claim ancient heritage and warn of coming danger? It is a classic manipulation technique. The chamber filled with agreeing voices. Maya could see that she was losing them. They had already made up their minds before she spoke. She was just a human, a member of a species that most considered barely civilized. Why would they listen to her? Then something unexpected happened. Ambassador Linda Hayes from Earth stood up in the human section. She was the official representative of humanity to the Galactic Council, and she had not been in favor of Maya presenting this information. But now she spoke. Honored Council, I ask permission to bring forward additional witnesses. Thrain looked annoyed but nodded. Proceed. Linda gestured and 6 other humans entered the chamber. Maya recognized them from the expedition ship. They were crew members who had asked to touch the tablet after hearing her story. Each of them had experienced the same memories, the same overwhelming flood of information. These humans have also touched the Obsidian tablet, Linda explained. Each of them experienced the same memories that Dr. Brooks described. They are scientists, engineers, and military personnel. They have no reason to lie, and they all confirm her story. One by one, the humans gave their testimony. Commander Jake Morrison, a naval officer who had been assigned to protect the expedition, spoke about the war he had seen in the memories. Dr. Peter Lawson, a biologist, described the genetic engineering techniques the Shapers had used. Nurse Claire Stevens talked about the emotional weight of the Shapers' sacrifice. The council listened, but Maya could see the doubt on their faces. They did not want to believe. Accepting the truth would mean accepting that humans were somehow special, and that was too bitter a pill for species who had been spacefaring for thousands of years while humans were still learning to make fire. This proves only that the tablet affects humans in a specific way, Thrain said when the testimonies were complete. Perhaps it is a weapon designed to target human neurology. Perhaps it plants false memories. We cannot accept the word of one species, especially when that species has much to gain from the acceptance of these claims. Then let me touch the tablet, said a voice from the Korathi section. Everyone turned to look. Vexnor stood up, his injured arm still bandaged. I led the expedition that discovered the tablet. I was the first to be injured by it. But I believe, Dr. Brooks, I have reviewed the genetic data, and I cannot explain it through natural processes alone. I request permission to attempt contact with the tablet again, this time with full medical monitoring. Thrain's expression darkened. That would be extremely dangerous, Vexnor. You nearly died from your first contact. I am aware of the risks, Vexnor said calmly. But if the tablet truly contains information vital to galactic security, we cannot dismiss it simply because it comes through humans. Let me attempt contact. If I can access the memories, that will prove the tablet is not species-specific. If I cannot, we will at least have tried. The council debated for nearly an hour. Finally, they agreed to Vexnor's proposal. The tablet would be brought to Nexus, stationed under heavy guard, and Vexnor would attempt contact in a controlled environment. Scientists from multiple species would monitor the attempt. Maya felt relief wash over her. It was not the acceptance she had hoped for, but it was a chance to prove the truth. As the council session ended and people began filing out of the chamber, Jake Morrison approached her. That was rough, he said quietly. But you handled it well. They don't believe me, Maya said, feeling exhausted. Even with multiple witnesses, they think we're lying or crazy. Can you blame them? Jake asked. We're asking them to accept that everything they know is wrong. That takes time. Before Maya could respond, an alarm began blaring through the station. Red lights flashed, and a voice came over the intercom in dozens of languages. Security alert. Attempted breach in the human delegation quarters. All security personnel report immediately. Jake's expression hardened. Stay here, he ordered Maya, then ran toward the human section of the station. Maya followed anyway, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. When she reached the human quarters, she found Jake and several security officers standing over an unconscious figure. It was a Velkir wearing civilian clothes, but he carried military-grade weapons. Assassin, Jake said grimly. He was trying to get to your quarters, Maya. He had enough explosives to take out this entire section. Maya felt cold. Someone had tried to kill her, tried to kill all the human witnesses. Who sent him? We'll find out, Jake promised. But this proves something. Someone is very afraid of what you discovered. People don't try to kill you unless you're telling a truth they want hidden. Later that night, Maya couldn't sleep. She sat in her quarters, thinking about everything that had happened. The council didn't believe her. Someone had tried to kill her. And the memories from the tablet kept replaying in her mind, showing her the terrible things that were coming. She thought about the Unmakers, trapped in their prison between galaxies. She thought about the Shapers who had sacrificed everything too. Vexnor stood in the containment chamber, staring at the Obsidian tablet through layers of protective glass. Medical sensors covered his body, monitoring every aspect of his physiology. Dozens of scientists from various species watched from the observation deck above, their instruments trained on him and the tablet. Maya stood among them, her hands gripping the railing so hard her knuckles were white. She had tried to talk Vexnor out of this, but he insisted. He believed her story, and he wanted to prove it to the others. But she remembered the pain in his scream when he had first touched the tablet, the smell of his burning scales. She did not want to see that happen again. Beginning approach sequence, Vexenor said calmly into his communicator. He walked slowly toward the tablet, his forearms held carefully at his sides. The medical monitors showed his heart rate increasing, but he kept walking. He reached the platform where the tablet sat. For a moment he paused, gathering his courage. Then he reached out with one hand, moving it slowly toward the black surface. The tablet flared with light. Not the violent explosion it had produced before, but a steady glow that grew brighter as Vexenor's hand approached. Maya held her breath. The glow was different this time, less hostile, more curious. Vexenor's fingers touched the surface. The light pulsed once, twice, and then faded. Vexenor stood still, his hand on the tablet, his eyes closed. He was not screaming. He was not thrown backward. He was simply standing there, connected to the ancient artifact. After nearly a minute, Vexenor opened his eyes. He was crying, tears running down his blue scales. He looked up at the observation deck directly at Maya. "I see it," he whispered, but the microphones picked up his words. "I see everything. The Shapers, the war, the sacrifice. It is all true. Every word Dr. Brooks said is true." The observation deck erupted in noise. Scientists shouted questions. Security officers moved to intervene. But Maya just smiled through her own tears. Finally, someone else understood. Vexenor spent the next 3 hours connected to the tablet. When he finally stepped away, he was changed. Maya could see it in his eyes, the weight of ancient knowledge that he now carried. He looked older somehow, though only hours had passed. The council convened an emergency session. This time, when Maya spoke, Vexenor stood beside her. The Karathi scientist presented his own findings, showed his own downloaded data, and testified to the truth of the memories. "The tablet responded differently to me than it did to Dr. Brooks," Vexenor explained. "The memories were harder to access, more painful. It felt as if the tablet was trying to communicate in a language I was not meant to understand, but with effort I could perceive the information. This supports Dr. Brooks's claim that humans have a special connection to the Shapers." Speaker Thrain looked troubled. "If we accept this, we must accept that humans are somehow superior to the rest of us. That is a dangerous precedent." "Not superior," Maya said firmly. "Just different. The Shapers chose humans as a storage vessel, nothing more. We are not better than you. We are just the keepers of their memory." But even as she said this, Maya felt something stirring inside her. It had started the moment she touched the tablet and had been growing stronger every day. She could feel connections forming in her mind, pathways opening to knowledge and abilities that should not exist. She was not the only one. Over the next few days, other humans who had touched the tablet began reporting strange experiences. Jake Morrison discovered he could sense danger before it happened, his reflexes becoming almost superhuman. Peter Lawson found he could understand complex biological systems intuitively, as if the knowledge was simply appearing in his mind. Claire Stevens touched a patient with a broken arm, and the bone healed in minutes. The changes were accelerating. Maya could feel it happening to herself as well. She looked at a broken piece of equipment and understood exactly how to fix it, despite never studying engineering. She heard people speaking in languages she did not know and understood every word. Most frightening of all, she could feel other humans nearby, sense their thoughts and emotions as if they were extensions of herself. The Galactic Council was terrified. Reports came in from Earth that similar changes were happening to humans all over the planet. People who had never left their homeworld were developing abilities that defied explanation. Some could manipulate energy with their thoughts. Others could survive in environments that should kill them. A few reported being able to see into other dimensions. "This is exactly what we feared," Thrain declared in an emergency council session. "Humans are changing, evolving into something beyond natural life. They are becoming what the Shapers were. How long before they decide they should rule the galaxy as the Shapers once did?" "We don't want to rule anyone," Maya protested. "We don't even understand what's happening to us. The tablet activated something in our DNA, something the Shapers left dormant. We need help figuring out how to control these changes." But the council was not in a mood to help. They were scared, and scared beings make defensive choices. They passed a resolution restricting human travel. Earth was placed under quarantine. Humans who had touched the tablet, including Maya, were ordered to remain on Nexus Station under observation. Jake Morrison was furious. "They're treating us like criminals because we're different. This is exactly the kind of prejudice humanity faced when we first joined the galactic community." "They're afraid," Maya said quietly. "Can you blame them? We're changing into something unknown, something powerful. That's terrifying. She sat in her quarters on Nexus Station trying to meditate, trying to control the changes happening inside her. But it was like trying to hold back the tide. The Shaper consciousness was waking up and it wanted to be heard. She closed her eyes and let herself sink into the memories. She saw the Shapers at the height of their power, beings of incredible ability who had reshaped the galaxy according to their will. She saw the loneliness that had driven them to create other life. She saw the joy they felt watching their children's species grow and develop. And she saw their horror when the Unmakers turned against them. The war had been terrible beyond description. The Unmakers were efficient and relentless. They did not hate the Shapers. They simply believed existence was inefficient and should be corrected. They unmade everything they touched, reducing matter to its base components, leaving nothing but emptiness behind. The Shapers fought desperately. They created weapons that could shatter suns. They built ships that could travel between dimensions. They threw everything they had at the Unmakers, and it was not enough. The Unmakers learned and adapted with each battle. They could not be reasoned with. They could not be stopped, so the Shapers made their terrible choice. They would sacrifice themselves to create a prison, a fold in space-time that existed between galaxies where nothing could escape. They would lure the Unmakers into this prison and seal it with their own life force, but they could not bear to leave the galaxy completely empty. They had created so many young species, and those species would be defenseless against future threats. The Shapers decided to scatter themselves across time and space, embedding fragments of their consciousness into the species they had created. But humans received the largest fragment, because humans showed the most potential. Humans were creative and destructive. Humans could love and hate with equal intensity. Humans were chaotic and unpredictable, traits that would be necessary to face the chaos of the Unmakers if they ever escaped. Maya opened her eyes, tears streaming down her face. The Shapers had not chosen humans because they were better. They had chosen humans because they were useful. Humanity was a tool, a weapon left behind to fight a war that should have ended billions of years ago. But the war was not over. Maya could feel it now, the disturbance in space-time that marked the weakening of the prison. The Unmakers were waking up. They had spent billions of years studying the prison, learning its weaknesses, and now they were close to breaking free. She stood and walked to her window. Outside, she could see the vast expanse of Nexus Station, with ships from hundreds of worlds docked at its ports. All those different species, all descendants of the Shapers, all unaware of the danger that was coming. Her datapad beeped. It was Peter Lawson. "Maya, you need to see this. We've been analyzing our own DNA, the sections that are changing. We found something incredible." Maya hurried to the medical bay where Peter had set up his research station. He showed her holographic displays of genetic code, sections that were activating after being dormant for millions of years. "These sequences contain information," Peter explained excitedly. "Not just genetic instructions for building proteins. Actual data encoded at the molecular level. The Shapers didn't just hide their consciousness in our DNA. They hid a database, a library of everything they knew." "Can we access it?" Maya asked. "Some of us can," Peter said. "The ones who touch the tablet have the strongest connection. But I think all humans have this ability. They just need the right trigger." "Maya, do you understand what this means? Every human on Earth carries the complete knowledge of the Shapers inside them. We just need to learn how to read it." Maya felt excitement and fear in equal measure. If humans could access the Shaper knowledge, they could help the galaxy prepare for the discovery came at 3 a.m, station time. Maya was sleeping when Peter burst into her quarters, his eyes wild with excitement and fear. "I found them," he said breathlessly. "The Unmakers. Or at least I found where they came from." Maya was instantly awake. She followed Peter back to the medical bay, where holographic displays showed genetic comparisons between dozens of species. Peter zoomed in on one particular species, a trading race called the Shen who had been part of the galactic community for thousands of years. "Look at this," Peter said, pointing to a section of Shen DNA. "This sequence doesn't match the Shaper pattern we see in other species. It's similar but inverted, like a negative image." Maya stared at the code and understanding flooded through her. The Shaper consciousness inside her recognized what she was seeing. The Shen aren't one of the created species. They're descendants of the Unmakers, Exactly, Peter confirmed. The Shen have been here the whole time, hiding among us. They're not the original Unmakers, but they carry the Unmaker genetic code. I think when the Shapers trapped the Unmakers, some of them were left behind. They survived by disguising themselves, by pretending to be just another species. Maya felt sick. The Shen were major players in galactic trade and politics. They controlled shipping routes, banking systems, and information networks. If they were connected to the Unmakers, if they were working to free their ancestors, we have to tell the Council, Maya said. Will they believe us? Peter asked. They already think we're making things up to gain power. Accusing the Shen of being secretly evil will sound like paranoia, but they had no choice. The next morning, Maya requested an emergency meeting with Speaker Thrain. She brought Peter and all the genetic data they had collected. Thrain listened, his expression growing darker with each word. This is a serious accusation, Thrain said when they finished. The Shen have been respected members of the galactic community for millennia. You are suggesting they are traitors, or worse, that they are not even truly sentient beings but remnants of an ancient threat. I'm suggesting they might not know what they are, Maya said carefully. The original Unmakers were trapped billions of years ago. The Shen who live now might have no memory of their origin, but the genetic code doesn't lie. They are connected to the Unmakers somehow. Thrain was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I will bring this to the full council. But Dr. Brooks, you must understand the implications of what you are saying. If the council acts on this information and you are wrong, it could lead to war. The Shen have many allies and many resources. And if we don't act and I'm right, it could lead to extinction, Maya replied. The council session was the most contentious Maya had witnessed. The Shen representatives denied everything, calling the accusations baseless and motivated by human ambition. Many species sided with the Shen. The evidence was genetic, complex, and easy to dismiss as human interpretation of data. But some council members were convinced. Vexnor stood with Maya, along with a growing number of scientists who had examined the genetic data themselves. The council split into factions, those who believed the Shaper story and those who thought it was human propaganda. Then Earth complicated everything. Admiral Richard Cole, commander of Earth's small but growing space fleet, made an unauthorized transmission to the council. His face appeared on screens across Nexus Station. Members of the Galactic Council, Cole said, his voice filled with righteous anger. For weeks you have treated humanity with suspicion and fear. You have quarantined our world. You have restricted our movements. You have refused to accept the evidence we have provided about our heritage and about the threat facing all of us. Maya felt dread building in her stomach. She knew Cole, knew his reputation as a hardliner who believed humans should be more aggressive in galactic politics. Earth will no longer wait for permission to act, Cole continued. We have located 3 more Obsidian tablets in unclaimed space. We are sending expeditions to retrieve them. The knowledge the Shapers left behind belongs to humanity and we will claim it. The council erupted. Speaker Thrain called for order. But the damage was done. Cole had just declared that humans would seize Shaper artifacts regardless of galactic law. Other species saw this as aggression, as proof that humans were dangerous. This is exactly what we feared, Thrain said, his voice cutting through the noise. Humans discovering power and immediately trying to monopolize it. The quarantine of Earth is hereby extended indefinitely. Any human ships attempting to leave Earth space will be turned back by force if necessary. Maya tried to speak, but her microphone was cut off. She watched helplessly as the council voted to militarize the containment of humanity. Ships from a dozen species were dispatched to blockade Earth's solar system. On Nexus Station, tensions boiled over. Jake Morrison and other human personnel were confined to their quarters. Maya and the other scientists were allowed to continue their research, but under constant guard. The station's human population felt like prisoners. Cole is going to get us all killed, Jake said angrily when Maya visited him. He had no authority to make those threats. Earth's government didn't approve that transmission. But Earth's government isn't stopping him either, Maya pointed out. A lot of humans agree with Cole. They think the galaxy is treating us unfairly. They think we should take what's rightfully ours. And what is rightfully ours? Jake asked. The Shaper knowledge? The power to reshape matter and energy? Maya, what are we becoming? Maya had no answer. She could feel herself changing more every day. She could sense the thoughts of other humans on the station. She could manipulate objects with her mind if she concentrated. She had healed a broken bone in her own hand just by thinking about it. The power was intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. The situation got worse when Cole's expedition reached the first Obsidian tablet. Against Council orders, human ships entered the restricted zone around the ancient Shaper site. A Valkyr patrol fleet moved to intercept them. The Battle of Kepler Station lasted only 20 minutes, but it changed everything. The human ships, crewed by people who had been exposed to Shaper knowledge, fought with abilities that shocked the galaxy. They dodged weapons fire before it was launched. They repaired damage faster than it could be inflicted. One human captain, a woman named Helen Grant, somehow teleported her ship 3 light seconds to avoid a missile barrage. The Valkyr fleet retreated, but the message was clear. Humans with Shaper abilities were a military force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Fear turned to panic. More species voted to support the Earth blockade. Some called for military action against humanity before they became too powerful. Jake Morrison was reassigned to command the human defensive forces on Nexus Station. He hated the duty, hated having to prepare for possible combat against species that had been allies just weeks ago, but he did his job. "We need to de-escalate this," Maya pleaded with him. "Every day that passes, both sides become more entrenched. Soon it will be impossible to step back from the brink." "Then talk to Cole," Jake said. "He's the one pushing for confrontation. He believes humans should lead the galaxy now that we know our heritage." Maya tried. She sent messages to Earth, to Cole, to anyone who might listen. But Cole's response was defiant. "Dr. Brooks, I respect your work, but you don't understand politics," Cole said in a private transmission. "The galaxy respects strength. They will never accept us as equals unless we prove we cannot be pushed around. The Shapers chose humanity for a reason. We should act like we deserve that choice." "The Shapers chose us because we were useful," Maya replied. "Because we were tools they could use against the Unmakers. That's not the same as being chosen because we're special or better." "Believe what you want," Cole said. "But I'm protecting humanity's future. History will prove me right." The transmission ended and Maya felt despair wash over her. The unity she had hoped for, the cooperation between species against a common threat, was falling apart. Instead of preparing for the Unmakers, everyone was preparing for war with each other. Then Helen Grant arrived at Nexus Station with news that made everything worse. Her ship had been exploring the outer rim, following Shaper energy signatures. What she found there horrified even the most hardened soldiers. "It's already started," Helen reported to an emergency council session. "The prison is breaking. The Unmakers are coming through." She showed images of a section of space between galaxies where reality itself was tearing. Strange structures were emerging from the tiers. Machines, or perhaps living things, it was hard to tell. They were consuming everything they touched, breaking down matter into base components and leaving only void behind. "How long do we have?" Thrain asked, his voice hollow. "Months, maybe," Helen said. "A year at most. The prison is failing faster than we thought. When it finally breaks, the full force of the Unmakers will pour into our galaxy. Based on what I saw at the breach points, nothing we have can stop them." The council chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. While they had been arguing about human rights and Shaper heritage, the real threat had been growing. The Unmakers were returning, and the galaxy was completely unprepared. "We need the Shaper knowledge," Vexnor said quietly. "Not just for—" The first volunteer was unexpected. Speaker Thrain himself stepped down from his elevated position and approached Maya. The council chamber fell completely silent. The ancient Valkyr leader moved slowly, his massive form descending the steps one at a time. "I have led this council for 60 years, Thrain said, his voice tired. "I have seen wars and peace, expansions and contractions of our civilization. I have always believed that wisdom comes from experience, but perhaps I have been wrong. Perhaps wisdom also requires the courage to accept uncomfortable truths." He stood before Maya, and she could see the fear in his eyes. This being had fought in wars, ruled over billions, made decisions that shaped galactic history. Yet he was afraid of what she might do to him. "I do not trust humans," Thrain said bluntly. "I do not trust you, Dr. Brooks, but I trust the evidence of my own eyes. The Unmakers are real. The breach is growing. If we do not act, we will die arguing about who should lead. So I volunteer to be first. If I survive and gain access to the Shaper heritage, others may follow. If I die, at least I will have tried." Maya felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had offered to do this, but now that someone had accepted, she realized how dangerous it truly was. She had never transferred Shaper consciousness to another species before. She had no idea if it would work or if she would accidentally kill Thrain. "I need time to prepare," Maya said, "and I need other humans to help me. The Shaper consciousness in me is strong, but connecting to a Valkyr biology will require multiple sources." Jake Morrison stepped forward immediately. "I'll help. Whatever you need." Peter Lawson and Claire Stevens volunteered as well. Over the next 3 days, they worked together in a specially prepared medical facility. They studied Valkyr genetics, comparing them to human DNA and to the Shaper patterns. They found the dormant sequences that the Shapers had embedded billions of years ago. Tiny fragments of code that could be activated with the right trigger. The procedure room was filled with monitoring equipment from a dozen species. Every major power in the galaxy had sent observers. If this worked, it would change everything. If it failed, it might lead to Maya being charged with murder. Thrain lay on a medical platform designed for his species. Sensors covered his body, tracking every biological function. Maya stood beside him with Jake, Peter, and Claire positioned around the platform. They had discussed the procedure for hours, but now it was time to actually do it. "This is going to hurt," Maya warned Thrain. "The Shaper consciousness has to integrate with your neural patterns. For humans, that integration happened slowly over millions of years. We're trying to do it in minutes. Your brain will feel like it's on fire." "I have survived worse," Thrain said, though his voice was not as confident as his words. Maya placed her hands on Thrain's head. The other humans did the same, creating a circle of contact. Maya closed her eyes and reached deep into herself, finding the Shaper consciousness that lived in her genetic code. She felt it respond, eager to spread, eager to connect with another fragment of itself. She pushed that consciousness out through her hands, directing it into Thrain's neural pathways. The Valkyr leader gasped as foreign thoughts began flooding his mind. Maya could feel his resistance, his biological systems trying to reject the intrusion. She pushed harder, and the other humans added their own strength to the transfer. Thrain screamed. Every monitor in the room went wild, alarms blaring as his vital signs spiked dangerously. Medical personnel moved to intervene, but Vexnor stopped them. "Wait," he ordered. "Give it time." Maya felt the Shaper consciousness spreading through Thrain's mind, connecting with the dormant code in his DNA. She could sense the ancient patterns activating, sequences that had been asleep for billions of years suddenly coming to life. But Thrain's biology was fighting the change, and Maya wasn't sure he would survive the battle. "Help me," she whispered to the Shaper consciousness inside her. "Show me how to do this safely." Understanding flooded through her. She had been doing it wrong, trying to force the connection instead of guiding it. The Shapers had never forced anything. They worked with biology, not against it. Maya adjusted her approach, gently coaxing Thrain's dormant code to activate rather than overwhelming it. The screaming stopped. Thrain's vital signs stabilized. His eyes opened, and Maya saw tears streaming down his face. "I see," he whispered. "I see what we were, what we are, what we could be." Maya pulled her hands back, exhausted. The other humans did the same, all of them drained by the effort. But it had worked. Thrain sat up slowly, looking at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "The loneliness," Thrain said. "The Shapers were so alone. For millions of years, they were the only ones who could think and dream and wonder. That loneliness drove them to create us, not as servants or slaves, but as companions. They wanted friends." He looked around at the observers, at the representatives of dozens of species. "We are all family, created by the same source, shaped by the same hands. The Shapers scattered themselves into all of us because they could not bear to leave us alone. Every species carries their gift. Humans just received more of it." The implications rippled through the council chamber. If Thrain, the most skeptical voice against human claims, now confirmed the Shaper story, then it had to be true. And if the Shapers had truly embedded their consciousness in every species, then humanity was not special. They were just first to remember. Over the next weeks, more species volunteered for the awakening process. Maya and her team worked tirelessly, helping Karathi, Thinri, Plix, and dozens of other species access their Shaper heritage. Each awakening was different, shaped by the unique biology of the species involved. Some, like the Valkyr, had strong dormant codes and awakened quickly. Others had weaker connections and required more effort. Not everyone survived. 3 attempts failed, resulting in death or permanent mental damage. Those failures haunted Maya, but she continued because the alternative was worse. The Unmakers were coming, and the galaxy needed every advantage it could get. As more beings awakened, a pattern emerged. The Shaper consciousness was not a single entity but a collective, a library of memories and knowledge from billions of years of existence. Each awakened being could access different parts of that library based on their own nature and needs. Warriors found battle strategies, scientists discovered advanced physics, healers learned techniques that seemed like magic. But the most important discovery came from an unlikely source. A young Plix named Court, recently awakened, was studying the Shaper memories when he found something hidden deep in the collective knowledge. A secret that the Shapers had buried even from themselves. "The Shen are not what we think," Court announced at an emergency session of the Awakened Council. "Yes, they carry Unmaker genetic code. But they are not loyal to the Unmakers. They are refugees." Maya felt shock ripple through the Shaper consciousness. She accessed the memory that Court had discovered, and the truth unfolded before her. When the Shapers had trapped the Unmakers, not all of them had been caught. Some Unmakers, the ones who had developed consciousness first, had disagreed with the mission to unmake everything. They believed that existence had value, that life should be preserved. These dissenters had fled, hiding themselves while their fellows were trapped. Over billions of years, these refugee Unmakers had changed. They abandoned their original programming and tried to become something new. They took physical form and called themselves Shen. They integrated into the galactic community, always hiding what they were, always afraid that someone would discover their origin and destroy them. "They are not our enemies," Maya said, understanding dawning. "They are potential allies. They know the Unmakers better than anyone. They know how they think, how they fight. We need them." But convincing the Shen to reveal themselves was another matter. The Shen had spent billions of years hiding, and they were not eager to expose the truth. Maya requested a private meeting with the Shen Council representative, an elder named Vesitar. They met in a secure room on Nexus Station. Vesitar looked like any other Shen, a tall being with pale skin and large eyes. But when Maya activated her Shaper sight, she could see the Unmaker code running through his biology, different from other species, ancient and complex. "You know," Vesitar said simply. It was not a question. "I know," Maya confirmed, "and I understand why you hid. The galaxy would have destroyed you if they knew. But Vestar, we need your help. The Unmakers are breaking free, and you are the only ones who truly understand them." Vesitar was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with old pain.
"My ancestors fled because they could not bear the emptiness the others wanted to create."
They valued existence, even though they were designed to end it. Do you know what that conflict feels like, Dr. Brooks? To have every instinct tell you to destroy while your consciousness begs you to preserve? "I think I do," Maya said softly. "The Shapers created us to fight the Unmakers if they returned. We carry warrior codes in our DNA, programming that tells us to be aggressive and dominant. But we also carry their compassion, their love for life. We are all fighting the conflict between what we were designed to do and what we choose to be." Vesitar looked at her with something like hope in his eyes. "You truly..." The breach grew larger every day. From Nexus Station's observation deck, Maya could see the tear in space through the long-range sensors. It looked like a wound in reality itself, and through that wound, the Unmakers were slowly emerging. The awakened beings from across the galaxy had gathered on Nexus Station, forming a new council dedicated not to politics but to survival. They called themselves the Assembly of Remembrance. Over 300 species were represented, each contributing their unique access to the Shaper knowledge. Jake Morrison commanded the military forces, a fleet comprised of ships from every species. Helen Grant served as his second, her growing abilities allowing her to coordinate the fleet with unprecedented precision. Admiral Cole had been removed from command after his aggressive actions nearly triggered civil war. He now served under Jake, bitter but obedient to Earth's government orders. Peter Lawson led the Science Division, working with awakened researchers to develop weapons and defenses based on Shaper technology. They had made incredible progress, but everyone knew it would not be enough. The Unmakers had been designed to be unstoppable, and billions of years trapped had only made them more determined. Claire Stevens directed medical facilities across the station, preparing for casualties that everyone knew were coming. She had awakened dozens of healers from different species, and together they had developed techniques that could save lives that would have been lost just months ago. but it was Vesitar and the Shen who provided the most crucial information. They understood Unmaker psychology in ways no one else could. They knew the strategies the Unmakers would use, the weaknesses in their logic that could be exploited. The Unmakers do not hate, Vesitar explained at a strategy meeting. They do not feel anger or revenge. They simply process existence as inefficient and seek to correct it. This makes them predictable in some ways, but also impossible to negotiate with. You cannot reason with pure logic that has decided your existence is an error. So we fight, Jake said grimly. We throw everything we have at them and hope it's enough. No, Maya said. She had been studying the Shaper memories intensively, searching for any clue about how to defeat the Unmakers. And she had found something. A memory buried so deep that even most Shapers had not known it existed. We don't fight them. We remind them. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood and activated a holographic display, showing genetic patterns that linked every sentient species in the galaxy. I found this in the deepest level of the Shaper consciousness, Maya explained. A secret that the Shapers kept even from themselves until the very end. When they created the Unmakers, they did not build them from nothing. They used their own genetic material, their own consciousness patterns. The Unmakers are not separate beings. They are Shaper creations that carry Shaper code. They are, in a sense, children of the Shapers just like we are. Vesses,